Um, I'm Casey Raymond, as many of you know. I'm in the chemistry department. I'm also going to be leading the faculty accessibility fellows this coming year, and I'm on the work group for accessibility. And so I want to talk to you today a little bit about structured content, and specifically within Word and Google Docs. This is one of those little things that if you start doing will make a big impact on the accessibility of your documents. There's some other benefits to it too, particularly the going down the line of a print document and so forth, but just incorporating the structured content idea within Word or Google Docs can make a big improvement for your accessibility. So there's 5 principles of accessibility that we generally keep talking about for digital accessibility in our content in our campus. Identify the content types, which is a big part of what we're going to talk about today. Provide text equivalents if you have images. Use color carefully, which will be talked about later today. Provide descriptive hyperlinks and use clear language. The key one today that we're going to be addressing, though, is the identifying content types. And we're going to go through an example both in Word and in Google Docs so that you can see how we go about that process. And so here's a recipe. What do folks think of this recipe?
I'll read it and try to make sense out of it.
It feels disorganized.
Feels a little disorganized. It's all just crammed all together, isn't it? There's no visual clues. There's nothing to really help you understand what's just text, what might be ingredients, and so forth. It's kind of overwhelming. This is sort of a visual example of what unstructured text appears to an accessibility checker or someone that's using adaptive technology for some reason, such as, a screen reader. Their hands are full and they want just read to them. There's no way to skip around and just get to the ingredients or so forth. And so this recipe provides a really kind of key and straightforward example of how we can think about structuring. What do you think would make sense for dividing this up?
Well, you make a cut at the directions first and separate those. Yep, right there.
Getting things separated, pulling out directions, maybe pulling out ingredients.
Yeah, I was going to say settings and subsettings help a lot. Hit settings and headings and subheadings. Sorry, haven't had enough coffee yet.
That's okay. So just putting in some returns, right? Looks like we've got a name of the recipe, a description of it, a list of ingredients, a set of directions. All right. So immediately, visually, this is better for us, but it hasn't addressed the accessibility components. All right. You can start putting in, bolding, making things stand out a little bit, and so forth. All right. But there's.
I was going to say bullets,
lists,
and numbered.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So we can start doing these types of things. And so what I want to do is give you this example text and let you kind of work through it with me as we go through it. Because what we've just done, and this is what you want to do when you are working with a document, is think about how it's organized. Think about the headings that you might need and the subheadings. Think about lists. And all of those visual things in bolding and bullets and numbers allow us to scan it. But if we apply them with correct styles or tags, that same scanning and skimming is available through whatever assistive technology someone might be using. All right, so we have to identify the content types, and we can do that based on headings and paragraphs and lists. We're not going to address tables and links and images right now. Just realize that tables can present some inherent accessibility problems. There's ways to make accessible tables. But if you decide you're using a table just to show a layout and content, it's probably not the best use of a table. All right. And I'll use that.
Are those text colors all different?
They are a little bit, and I'm not sure why.
Okay. Like I thought my eyes were going wonky.
No, they're not. I wondered the same thing.
Okay.
This is a good time as well. We just touching on tables. You want, as you think about going to digital documents and making them very accessible digitally, you want to think differently than you might have thought for a printed document. You know, there's things that you probably have always done for printed documents because they look nice. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good for accessibility. And so it's kind of a big leap or hurdle that you want to kind of realize is as you're thinking about things for accessible documents, you're going to do things a little bit differently than you would if you were printing things. Some simple, straightforward ideas. You want to use some really basic, clean typefaces, fonts. The first four I listed here are all referred to as sans serif typefaces. The last one is a serif typeface. It's generally becoming viewed that these types of typefaces are better in a digital format. They're easier to read on a screen. They take up a little less space. You know, black on white works really good. White on black can work. It looks a little strange sometimes, but black and white is totally fine. You know, your text really should be 12 points or larger, headings a little bit bigger. You should use your headings, and we'll see these in a moment, in order. So you should have heading 1s before you have heading 2s, before you have heading 3s. You want to think about these things kind of in order. Having some white space is a good thing. You don't necessarily need the text to fill the entire screen. And what we're going to talk about now is this idea of themes, formats, styles in Word and in Google Docs. All right. So what I want to do, I just lost it. Here we go. I'm going to put in the chat a link to a Google Doc with that recipe text. So you don't have to copy it, type it yourself. You can just go to this link and it's going to make you make a copy of that document. But you should end up with something that looks like this now on the screen. I'll give folks a chance to get that. And if you want, once you have this, if you want to select everything here with select all, Control A, Command A, and copy and paste that into a Word file, you can do that as well. So that you'll have it in a Word document, unformatted, and you'll have it in Google Docs, unformatted. Sorry, Karen, I wasn't quite catching it. We will talk about tables on Thursday, I think it is. Thursday, as part of talking about mathematical notation. So in Google Docs, your styles are listed right here. Right. There's also, you know, under format, the whole list there as well. Okay. But if you want this to be, so your immediate thought is I'm going to make it a title. The title is really, from an accessibility standpoint, only used if it's a large document like a book. You really want to start with heading 1. And we can just say apply, and notice it's bigger. Right. My typeface is a little larger, but if I want to make it bold, I could do that. But now it's not necessarily following that style. And so go back, notice it's reset. So if I want that style to be bold, I can say, make it bold, come down here and say, update heading 1 to match. And now anytime I do something as heading 1, it'll be bolded that way. Do you think ingredients should be the same heading as the name of the recipe? Probably not. So we really probably want that to be heading 2. So I'm going to say apply heading 2. And it's a little different format. It's indented a little bit. Right? I can change that. Slide it over here. Maybe I do want this to be bolded. And again, update it to match. The directions are probably a heading 2, just like ingredients. So I can make that a heading 2 and notice it's folded just now the way. All right. The other thing is in Google Docs, the outline view over here on the left is usually open by default. And notice as I've tagged things with heading 1 and heading 2, they end up in a list. And so I can easily navigate the document just by clicking on those. So if you have a longer document, it's really helpful. If we want to make this a list, you can just come over here and either make it a bulleted list, or you can do a numbered list. With the numbers in front, it would probably get confusing. I'll just do a bulleted list. So that sets it as a list. You can select these, make it a numbered list.
Casey,
Yep,
where do you find the headings?
They're right here in this drop down. Can everybody see the drop down when I pull it? Okay. So right next to where it says the Georgia or the typeface, there's a normal text.
Okay, I'm not used to using Google, so I don't even know how to get to text and stuff like that, but that's
the
my
toolbar. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be right there in that toolbar where you've got undo, redo, print, spell check, the zoom function, and then a normal text. It's also under format.
And if you don't see that toolbar, you can click on that little the caret all the way over on the left. It'll be an inverted one. Because that.
So if your screen looks like
it's
this,
going to be there all the time. Never mind.
Yep, no, it should be there. So this is how you can lay things out. And now if we said, well, I don't really want that to be black for whatever reason, I'm going to change it to a dark red. Again, if I tell it to update the heading 2 to match what's highlighted, notice the directions were also changed. All right. I want to briefly, before we go to the word, I want to show you another example. This is a syllabus that Fiona Call shared with us previously. And so right now, there's not a whole lot of structure to the content, right? This appears to be a list, but it's not formatted that way. There's a few things over here on the left. But if we go through and really think about, okay, we have course policies on attendance, electronic devices, email, and we start identifying all of those. So we can make all of those heading 3s under course policies. And then as I, in the outline view, can very quickly hop through the document.
Can you show that again, how you did that?
How I hopped?
Yeah, how you got
Oh.
those to all just pop out at the top like that? They were in with the text before.
So I changed tabs.
Oh.
You know, that I put it in the oven unbaked, and 2 minutes later I pulled it out of a different oven all baked. No, this is the raw document that's not very well formatted. And then if we go through and apply the styles in a logical way and add lists where they should be, it really cleans up the document, organizes it. So yeah, we see it pretty clean visually, but it also makes it quite accessible. And there is this advantage of being able to hop through this outline view and get to wherever we need to. All right. So I've shown you how to format and use the styles in Google Docs. Let's look at Word. And I'm going to do this a little differently than the directions that are in the slides, because I think it'll allow me to show you something a little different. But we have our same recipe here. And in your Home tab, I suspect you all have seen this big list of buttons where it's normal and no space and heading 1 and heading 2. And those are the ones that we want to use. And you can actually click on the pane here. The outline view is available for students, even if it's just a view. In the view mode, they should be able to see it, the outline view, but not edit the document. So I clicked on the Styles Pane button. It brings up a huge list, all the possibilities. It actually can be overwhelming. And at the bottom of the list as we see it, this is showing me the recommended styles. I can say styles in use, and there's none. All that's there is normal. I can say styles in the document, and that's a bunch of possibilities, and I can say everything, which would be overwhelming. So that gives me this view. And we've said previously the title of the recipe should be heading 1. Not the ingredients to be heading 2, not the directions to be heading 2. I can make this a bulleted list. I can make this our numbered list. And now if I change my view of my styles pane list to just those in use, notice it's much shorter. Still normal, I have heading 1, I have heading 2. I can go in, click the little drop down arrow and say modify style and make changes there. I can have highlighted this, make it bold, and say update to match the selection, just like I did in Google Docs. I do the same thing with heading 2, update to match selection. Notice directions became bold. In Word, you also have the option under this design tab to pick a theme. But now that I've already put the styles in place, notice when I pick any theme, everything changes based on that theme, based on the styles. I don't need to go in and change all of those things again. And so this is where using styles as you create a document can save you a huge amount of time. It also allows you to make things visually maybe more appealing, but it also allows you to create a document that's accessible without a whole lot of effort. And that's, I think, the most important aspect of doing styles. All right. Reasonable. The other advantage in Word for doing styles is if you've got a long document in the References tab, you can say, make a table of contents. We can pick whatever format we want and just do this. And I'm going to take and pick heading 1s, heading 2s. I don't have any heading 3s, so I'm not going to worry about it. Say okay. And it, oh, I put it in the wrong spot. And it automatically creates a table of contents based on all those headings. That's actually linkable. And so if you have a large document, you know, a large lab manual, or a document that you want your students to use throughout the semester, having used the styles in your document means you automatically create the table of contents. And all we have to do if we move things around is update it so the page numbers get corrected. You don't have to do any extra efforts. And so it's another reason to really plan to use styles.
Does that work in Google Docs as well?
There is a way, it's not as clean. The simple fact of the matter is it's not as clean.
Okay, all right.
Table of contents. So yes, it's there. So for everyone else, under insert, at the very bottom is table of contents. So these are the steps that we've looked at in Microsoft Word. And I'll put towards the end of this, a link to the slides in the chat so you have it, but there'll also be the recording. You know, in your home menu, you can identify styles like we did and then modify them. You can choose a theme, you know, and then modify them. In Docs, it's really about the same thing. It's the same process. It's just where you pick your styles from is a little different location. All right. I do want to point out a lot of this information, actually probably all of it, is available on our digital accessibility webpage. And I'm going to hop over to that. So get to the digital accessibility webpage, it's going to bring you to here. We have a whole set of written and video tutorials that Kate Percival has put together. And so here's a whole tutorial on how to do this in Word, as well as some other things using tables and so forth. But there's a video component of it. There's written components. The same for Google Docs. All right. So I really encourage you to kind of take advantage of that site and that resource. I want to remind everyone that upcoming sessions, there's one at 11 o'clock today for the level up folks on color and contrast. And then tomorrow, 10 a.m. level 1 group will be descriptive hyperlinks. There's some experiences of students with disabilities at 11. At 1:30, we'll be dealing with captions as the level up. And then on Thursday, our text equivalents and the formulas, math equations, we'll address some tables as well on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Use the drop-in sessions that are every day from 2 to 3. It's really, we've got work group members there, former fellows present. You can bring questions, issues you might be having, you get one-on-one and help. We've popped people out into breakout rooms with someone else to work on things. It's really, treat it like an office hours session, and get some of that extra help if you've run into something. You can certainly use the digital accessibility website, which I've just shown you. You can email Kate, myself, Michelle Thornton, who led the faculty fellows last year, and put together most of this slide deck. You can also find on the accessibility site all the different groups, committees that are involved, and who's on them. And so you can reach out to any of those folks as well for some additional help or questions that you might have. But do you have questions about what I've shown you today? I realize that in some ways I've shown you a lot, but I tried to keep it to a few really specific things with regard to styles and using lists appropriately, and just following those couple simple things to structure your content in the document really, really helps from an accessibility standpoint.